Welcome, my name is Gabriel and I'm a co-developer of the REI3 application platform. Today we're going to take a look at the REI3 Builder utility, how to use it and how to build applications with it. So let's jump right into it. I've prepared an empty installation here. To activate the builder, we go into the admin panel and we toggle the builder mode with this toggle. Just be certain that you're not running in a production environment. The builder is very powerful, you can create things, but you can also delete certain aspects of your applications, which can result in data loss. So when you're running the builder, you should be running it from a portable version on your Windows computer or on a secondary version on your Linux server, for example. When you're certain that you're not running in production, you can close this warning and activate the builder. With the builder active, we now have this third icon up here where we'll see all installed applications. This is an empty system, so we don't see much. You can always go into the repository and install any available applications as reference, how they're built, take a look how they operate. In a non-production system, it's actually quite easy to install applications. You can make changes, you can delete anything without bothering your users. But now we want to take a look at how to create new applications. So we go back to the builder and we create a new application. For this example, I will create an address book application. Just note that within an array instance, every application name must be unique. So to make certain of that, we'll use a prefix. So now the chance of a naming conflict is almost zero. After the application has been created, we can jump into it and now we'll be shown the application property page. Here again, we have the name as well as the application title. The application name is only visible inside the builder. It is used as a reference, while the application title is shown to actual users. If you're running in a multi-language environment, you can add additional languages down here. And then you can switch between them with this toggle on the left side. This application property page has many options like the default color of your application or an icon and so on. You can always reference the context help or you can directly go into the integrated documentation page, in this case the chapter about creating your own applications, and read up on all the details. But for now, to get started, when you work on your application, one of the first things you're going to do is decide what kind of data you're going to store. For this, we go into relations and we decide what kind of relations we want to have. For those who don't know, relation is a name that comes from database systems. Basically, you can think of a relation as a big table of data. So we are creating an address book, so we need stuff like contacts. So I'll create a relation for contacts, and within the relation, I'll create attributes. So basically, what kind of data my contact will have. In this case, I'll save stuff like names. So each of my contact will have a surname, a forename, and an email address. When you create attributes, you have many different options to choose from. Again, you can always go into the documentation, jump into the corresponding chapter. In this case, it's data storage and then attributes, and then read up on all the options and how they're used. For now, just quickly, you can create attributes with different data types like integers, so whole numbers, like decimal numbers, like text, like true and false values, and you can even attach files if you want to. For this example, it is completely sufficient to have 3 text attributes. Now we have these attributes, now we actually want to work with this data. In order to do that, we can create user interfaces. Forms are basically just user interfaces. In this case, we'll create a form to actually create or change contacts. So we jump into the form, and now we are greeted by the form editor. Just a quick note beforehand, the form editor is very powerful. You can create almost any layout that you want with it, but this short tutorial will only quickly jump into it and then go to the next topic. We also have another video on how the form editor works and how it is used for even complex requirements. but very, very shortly. In the middle, we have our form body, where we will be placing our fields via drag and drop. So you can take any field and drag and drop them to the form body. If you want to work with your data, you select a relation on the right side, in this case our contacts, and now we have our attribute input fields. So now we'll be placing those on our form, and after saving and opening the form, we can see that we have some input fields. This looks, well, not really very good. This is because you haven't created any sort of layout. Again, different video, but for now, I'll just create a very simple layout with our container fields, which I use to define size, orientation, and alignment of their child fields. So I can create a couple of containers here. I can decide to align them left to right. Then I can place my input fields inside of those container fields. Then I can size them up, so like 300 pixels wide, please. And then I can decide that they shouldn't take the entire page. And now my form has a very simple 2-column layout. There are many more options available. You can work with different options depending on whether or not you're on a mobile view, whether or not you work with pixels, or if you let these containers grow automatically. You can align items in the center of the screen and so on. So many more options available. Different video, but yeah, these are the basics. So now we have the form, but if you notice, we can actually, well, we can see it, but we can't make any changes to it. The reason for this is that the relation that we created still needs permissions. We are logged in as a user that doesn't have any roles assigned because there are no roles yet. This is a new application. A user role is there to assign permissions, and by default, we have the everyone role already pre-installed. Every user that logs in will receive all permissions that are in this role. But usually you want to create new roles for specific purposes. In this case, we'll create a user role. But you can also create roles for admin or even reporting purposes, for example. So going into the role, now we can assign permissions. We have a single relation, in this case contacts, and we can select what we want to allow for this relation. So we have read, read write, and read write delete. Now we have the permissions assigned, but we still need to assign the role to our currently logged in user. For this, we go back into the administration. We select our user, in this case the admin user, the default user for new systems, and we assign the new user role. Going back to the form, when we now open the form, we can actually make changes and create data. This is the first step, but if you have multiple forms or you want your users to actually find your inputs, you might want to create a menu to navigate with. Going into the sub-menu menus, we can create entries for all our forms. In this case, just one. We select a corresponding form, and we're already done. If you create multiple menu entries, you can nest them, so you could place them in a sub-menu, for example, but for now, a single entry is sufficient. To actually see the menu, we still need to assign this menu to our new user role, because different roles might have different menus. And as a very last step, if you want to see our applications up here, if you want the shortcut always visible, we need to define a start form for our application. So when you click on it, which form should open? So here we'll selecting our new form. And now that we have a start form, we actually see our application up here. As you can see here, our start form has been opened automatically. On the left side, we have our menu. And this is basically how you work with REI3. You create your application, you define your relations, what kind of data you want to store. You have your forms, how to work with your data, how to access your data. And then you have menus to navigate and roles to permit or deny access. This shows more functionality and how this is going to look when you build large applications. I'll be installing a couple of example applications. So I'll go to the repository and just install the task planner. With the task planner installed, I go back to the builder, and now I can see that not only the task planner, but other applications have been installed as well. The reason for this is that the task planner uses data and user interfaces from other applications. So for example, I can manage my task if I go into the roles again and assign new application rules to my current user, I can actually open the task planner. And when I go into the task planner, I can select things from other applications. This is quite useful, and when we create new applications like our address book, we might want to build on pre-existing applications. And when we do that, we can assign the data that we have in those applications. Within our address book, we can reference other things, we can reuse icons or user interfaces and even menus. This is very useful because then you only have to create certain things once, and then you can reference these things in future applications. So one use case, for example, is if very, very simply, we want to reuse things like icons because it's work to create icons for each and every application. We have created a central icon application that is a repository for all of our application icons. And if we want to reuse them in our address book, we just build on the icon application. And now if we go into, for example, a form, we can select all these icons from our icon application. So for our contact form, we'll select, well, a person, for example. And now we have this icon here. Going back to our task planner, when you have larger applications, you'll see more relations. These relations will be larger. For example, in this case, we are managing tasks, so we need things like task owner, when the task was created, if we have deadlines, if it's connected to a customer, and so on and so forth. We also have more roles for different purposes. We have an admin role in this case, or a data role to read and write data. We have more forms, and as you can see, forms can become quite complex. So when we open this, you see it's a bit more fun to create this than our very simple example form from before. Same with menus. You can see here we have a 6-entry menu with submenus and so on. And depending on which role you have, some of these menus will be shown and others will not be. So when you work with REI3, you basically over time grow your application, add more data, add more UI, and then add user permissions accordingly. When you are very advanced and you want to create very powerful applications, you can also use functions. Basically logic that you predefine that is executed on the server or on the client. So we have our backend functions where you can do things like calculate certain things, where you can do input checking, where you can make certain that certain values are allowed at certain time, for example. So one example is if you do absence management and you want to calculate public holidays, for example. This is something you can do with a backend function. You can also use front-end functions. So these affect stuff like the form that you're on. You click on a button, something should happen. Or you select something, and then it should navigate to a different form, for example. So these are a couple of examples what you can do, but there are going to be different videos for these specific topics. For now, this is mostly content-wise what we're going to look at this video, but a couple of tricks for people who work with the builder a lot. You can always use middle click to open new tabs, and you can use these tabs to use multi-window if you want. And if you create stuff and if you work on different things, then your windows are going to sync up. So in this case, I have relations open. I create a new one. And as you can see, the change is applied on both windows. So you can work with 2, 3, 4 windows if you want. You can work on a relation, and at the same time, you can work on a form that deals with the same relation. If I make changes here, oh, not delete, sorry. If I make changes here, you see changes are automatically applied on the form as well. So no worries, you can open as many windows as you like. This is just going to work. So when you're done working on your application, the last step that you're usually going to do is you go back to the start page, and here we have the wizard for application export. So you're done with your application. You either want to create a backup or you want to save this application to be transferred, deployed to a target system, a test system, or even production. For this, you select your application and then you click on Check Export. Now the REI3 installation will check whether or not you've made changes to your application since the last time that you exported. Well, this is a new app, so definitely. You create a new version, and now you can actually export your application. One thing to note is that because these applications are transferable, you can take them, you can send them via email, you can put them anywhere you like. you could potentially put bad code in it. That's why we have a security measure in the form of public keys. So when you want to send your application to your client, for example, or even if you want to use them internally, you need to sign your application. A lot of companies already have public and private keys, but if you don't, you can go into this assistant here and create a new key pair for this purpose. The only thing that you really need to understand is that a key pair consists of two pairs, of two values, the private key and the public key. The private key is what you use to sign your applications, so you copy paste this into this window, and now you can export your application. And you copy paste this into the target REI installation that should trust your application. Just make sure that you save your private key in a secure location. So basically your password safe, if you will. And the public key is, well, everybody can know this. This is not secret. You can just share this with your clients if you like. So if you take your public key, you go into the admin panel of your target REI3 installation, and then you'll add it to the list of trusted keys. As soon as this key has been added, you can go into the application page, and then you can install your new application via this upload dialog. Just make sure, again, that the private key stays private, that nobody can see it, and as long as you have your private key secure, then nobody can fake or manipulate your applications. So this is it for this short introduction tutorial to the builder, how to use it and how to build applications with it. For next steps, I would suggest looking at the video for working with the form editor to build complex and interesting forms with. Thank you for your attention and time, and have a good day.